Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you all so much for being with me here today. Super excited that you're here. Super excited to share with you my thoughts today on the long-awaited Steely Dan Katy Lied UHQR by Analogue Productions. We initially thought was going to get this, I think, in October or November, and it got delayed until this I guess it was January 31st. Of this year. We just barely got it just not even a week ago. So super excited to share with you my thoughts on it. What we'll try to accomplish today as we review this album is what I will talk with you about. We'll talk a little bit about the album, and then we're going to take a listen, and I'll talk to you about my impressions of the sound quality of the album. Prior to that, we'll actually take a look and see what's inside the box to see what we're getting for $150. And then once we take a listen to it, and I can tell you what my thoughts are and how the album sounds, we'll then compare it to a 1975 Tara Hought pressing, original pressing of Steely Dan Katy Lied, and then we'll talk about and compare it to the 1978 Mobile Fidelity release of the album. Now, I'm sure you're probably wondering and asking, why did I not get the just recent release when this album came out, the Geffen pressing? That album too was mastered by Bernie Grundman, but they take that to digital before they press the album. And the reason I didn't get that, and the reason I'm not comparing that today, is because I did purchase that version when I got Can't Buy a Thrill and I believe Countdown to Ecstasy. And while I thought it was decent and it was okay, it wasn't. My original pressings were better than that pressing, and it was in nowhere comparison to the UHQRs. And so I haven't done that. I think my money is better spent when the SACD comes out. In fact, when that comes out, we'll revisit this review when the SACD of Katy Lied comes out from Analogue Productions. I purchased the SACDs of the other UHQRs that have been released, and I'll be honest with you, they're fantastic. And so better than the $29 Geffen release, at least in my opinion, that it was. So that's why I'm not comparing that album along with the others that we're comparing. And so also, after we do the comparison, we'll rank them, and I'll tell you what I feel the ranking is between these three pressings. And then we'll talk about, is $150, is it worth $150 of your money to purchase the UHQR? We'll get into that, and then of course we'll wrap things up at that point. But let's go ahead and get started and talk about Steely Dan Katy Lied UHQR. Steely Dan Katy Lied was originally released in 1975. It was their fourth studio album. Their first studio album that they did is Steely Dan Can't Buy a Thrill. The second album was Countdown to Ecstasy. The third was Steely Dan Pretzel Logic. And then, of course, then Katy Lied. The next album to come out, and the last album to come out in the Analogue Productions UHQR series, is The Royal Scam, which is directly right after Katy Lied, and then before Asia, and then Gaucho. And so that will be the last UHQR that Analogue Productions will release, is Royal Scam, which is, by the way, another great, fantastic. I hope we don't have to wait another year for that to get released, but I guess we'll see. We'll Chad, I guess, will keep us updated on that. But anyway, the original pressing was done in 1975. In 1975, for Katy Lied, if you remember, Skunk Baxter, that was on the other three albums, studio albums, quit the band. Really, at that time, Steely Dan, Walter Becker, and Donald Fagen, they really kind of stopped touring, and they just focused on their studio type work and studio albums. And that's really kind of what they did. And as we all know from their past albums, they were fanatical on perfection, wanting everything to sound just right. They made sure that they had proper musicians, session musicians for their albums. And really on this album, Katy Lied, let me just tell you a few of the session players that they had playing on this album with them. They had, of course, Walter Becker on bass, Donald Fagen on keyboards and vocals, of course, but then they had Phil Woods on alto sax. And I tell you, the sax, we'll talk about that sax as we get thrown through the sound quality. It's amazing. But Phil Woods on alto sax, Michael McDonald's there doing some backup vocals along with a few other people. Jeff Beccaro, he was on drums. He did the drums on every one of the songs except for one, and that was Hal Blaine, and that was on Any World that he did that. Victor Feldman was on percussion and vibraphone. Hugh McCracken, Larry Carlton, Rick Derringer, Dean Parks, and then, of course, Walter Becker, and then a couple of others were on lead guitar. And some of the lead guitar in this album is just absolutely stunning and fantastic. But they were perfectionists. They wanted to make sure everything sounded just right. Well, let's go ahead and take a look and see what Analogue Productions has done with the UHQR of Steely Dan Katy Lied. Let's see what's in the box. Inside the UHQR box, we see a lot of familiar things that we have seen before. I'll just kind of quickly show you that. Hopefully I can show that to you without a whole lot of glare. The first thing that we have in the box is the technical specifications, and we've seen this in every one of the other UHQRs that Analogue Productions has done. I think it's absolutely simply a super nice touch. It talks a lot about how they go about the UHQR process. Here's a little leaflet by Chad Kassem, kind of telling us that there's 20,000 limited edition pressings of this UHQR. The next thing in is, of course, a little flyer which talks about, on this page here, the Pablo series, which, by the way, we're happy that they're doing 15 more. And then, of course, just inside of some of the pressings that they have done, are doing, and certainly currently doing. In here, they have the liner notes. This is all done by Donald Fagen. Hoping you can see this without a whole lot of glare, and I apologize if there is. I'm really going to be updating my lighting soon. Producer, of course, was Gary Katz. He's got a little bit of information on the back side. You get a very quality Stoughton tip-on old style jacket gatefold of the original album, which is absolutely stunning in its presentation. Of course, there's nothing in the pockets because they shipped the album or the vinyl separately, which is really good. We'll take a quick look at one of the albums. Of course, these are 180 gram albums, 45 RPM, mastered by Bernie Grundman from the original master tapes. Now, when I say that, that's what it says on the website. As I recall, and I'm not 100% sure of this, but I believe when Chad Kassem talked about and did his video on the release of the Steely Dan series on UHQR, it was him and Donald Fagen, and I believe that the tapes that they are using are one-off copies of the master tapes, because I believe they got damaged or burned up in a fire. I don't know all the details about that, but I believe it was a one-off copy for all of these albums that Donald Fagen owned. And so I think that's where the source came from. I could be wrong on that. It does say on the website that they're from the original master tapes that Bernie used to remaster these albums, but I think it was really a one-off tape that Donald Fagen owned. And correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe that was the case when they did the remastering of these albums. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the quality of the sound on this UHQR. Okay, getting into the sound of this UHQR by Analogue Productions of Steely Dan Katy Lied. Remember, this is 45 RPM, so we have two albums, 4 sides. So on side A, we have the song Black Friday, probably one of the most popular songs really on this album when it was originally released, and really one of Steely Dan's, I think, popular song, along with Bad Sneakers, Dr. Wu, and anyway, we'll get into that. But anyway, on Black Friday, excellent detail, especially on the lead guitar. There's proper weight on the bottom end. Drums sound very nice with good detail on them, which is really, I think, a kind of a hallmark of the Katy Lied album was Jeff Porcaro's drumming. At least it was to me. I really think it sounds great, and the UHQR really brings an added hint of good definition and certainly good detail to them. Moving on to Bad Sneakers, second song on side A. The percussion is very nice. Drums sound really good with very nice detail. Guitar again it's really excellent, well defined, good proper extension on that top end with the guitar. Fagen's vocals are excellent. They just sound really nice. Really good overall balance. There appears to be on this song, Bad Sneakers, to me anyway, really nice air around each of the instruments. It's really kind of neat to hear the instruments this way. It really does sound quite nice. Okay, moving on to side B of the first album, Rose Darling, one of my favorite songs on the album. It's a really fun, I think a really nice sounding song, but a really nice song in itself. Drums on this track are actually excellent. Vocals are excellent as well. Percussion is nicely defined. Excellent overall resolution and dynamics. Once again, on this song, and I don't know why, but Jeff Porcaro's drumming is fantastic. It just sounds great. Second song on side B. There's 3 songs on side B of this album. Second song is Daddy Don't Live in That New York City No More. This is a great song too, with really good dynamics in it. This might be my favorite track really on the album. It just has got a great tune to it. I mean, it just kind of gets you tapping your foot. It's a great sounding song. It's a well done song. Excellent definition and detail on everything. Lead guitar is excellent in that upper range as well. Percussion is very nicely detailed. Once again, the drums have very nice weight to it, very properly balanced with the rest of the albums. Top to bottom, really a nice sounding balance on this pressing. Third song is another great song, at least to me, on the album, Dr. Wu. My favorite track on the album, maybe, along with Daddy Don't Live. The whole album's great. I'm going to tell you that probably 5 or 6 of these songs are my favorite songs. It's all a great album. They're just great music. Percussion on Dr. Wu is excellent. Vocals are excellent and balanced with very nice clarity. Fagen's voice has some really nice clarity to it. This is where I was talking about Phil Woods and the sax. This is excellent. The sax on this is just very well defined. Really good extension on the top end. It sounds really nice, super well defined, lots of detail, clear and clean. Excellent. Piano is also very nicely detailed as well. Rolling over to the next album, to side C, Everyone's Gone to the Movies. Good song. Drums are excellent, along with the vibraphone. This is Victor Feldman, if you remember, with the vibraphone. It sounds really good. Very nice detail on the vibraphone. Vocals are very nicely done with good extension. Second song on side C, Your Gold Teeth. Now, this is really a fun song, too. And this kind of had a lot of radio playing time as well. It's a fun song, really a good song to really kind of vet the album out as well. Piano on this track is simply outstanding. Fagen on the keyboards, piano, it just sounds really good at the beginning of the track. All instruments sound really well balanced with excellent detail and definition. Guitar, once again, is just done very well. Super clean, super well detailed. Great song, Your Gold Teeth. Moving over to the last side of the second album, side D, Chain Lightning. Fun song. Excellent drums in percussion on this song. Detail and extension is absolutely superb. Guitar is clean and well defined. Best I have heard this track, to be honest with you. Vocals are nicely balanced with instruments. It's a superb track. Second song on side D, Any World. Now this is where Picaro's not drumming. He's not doing the drums on this one. The piano is really, really nice. Overall balance is nice. The track is okay. It's a pretty good sounding track. Probably the weakest track on the album, if you want my honest opinion. Third song and last song on side D is Throw Back the Little Ones. Fun song. I like this song. Excellent resolution on this track. Vocals are absolutely superb. Drums and keyboards are excellent. Once again, percussion is very good as well. Guitar again is excellent in clarity and detail. Piano is very nicely detailed as well. It's really an actually really nice sounding album. I think one thing that the UHQR achieved here, and this is just my personal take, just after listening to this maybe 5 times now since I've had the album, is Bernie Grundman didn't overdo this. Now, when I say that, what do I mean when I say that? Is he didn't really boost anything, at least in my opinion. What we have here, in my opinion, of the UHQR, is we have a really clean, nice sounding, very, very well balanced sound on the UHQR. And that's going to make a little bit of sense to you when we talk about the comparison albums that we have here. When we get into that balance, we'll talk a little bit about that. But really, it's just a superbly balanced mix. Really, the UHQR sounds to me like they've kind of taken a thin layer off the top of that master, one-off master tape, whatever it is, and just let us see a little bit clearer into the recording of that tape. I really think that's what they have done with the UHQR. Now, when we get into the comparisons, we'll talk a little bit more just how much of a difference that makes. And one thing that I should note too, in wrapping up the sound quality of the UHQR, the vinyl, as we have all expected, that Analogue Productions is doing with all of these UHQRs, the vinyl is dead quiet. It is so super quiet, which here again, and I've been a proponent of this, I really believe that adds so much to the recording. But once again, I think Bernie Grundman did a really nice job of putting a good balance and mix together with really making clear, defined, and maybe even proper detailed on the instruments and the sound without going overboard on making things too bright or making things too heavy in the bottom end. I think Bernie Grundman did a very, very nice balanced job on this recording. Now, let's jump in and compare this album to the 1975 original pressing, Terre Haute pressing, and then we'll also compare it to the Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs pressing of the album that came out in 1978. Okay, in comparison to the UHQR, the 1975 original Terre Haute pressing release. Let's take a quick look at it really quickly. Let me just show you the vinyl. On my original pressing, and I know this is going to kind of sound really weird to you, but here it is. Here's the album, my original 1975. It is the Terre Haute pressing. My original pressing of this album sounds fantastic. And I know there's been a lot of people that have said, hey, you know what? The original 1975 pressing of Katy Lied wasn't that great. I don't know if you believe in, if mine was one of those early pressings off a new stamper. I don't know. I'm not saying that. I don't have any proof. I have no idea. All I can say is, for the longest time, my original pressing has been a fantastic sounding album. So let's go ahead and compare it to the UHQR. On Black Friday, once again, as we talk about the guitar, and I talk about that guitar a lot because it really is a good sounding, it's very well defined, in particular on the UHQR. On the original pressing, it sounds excellent as well. It does have slightly, and I do mean slightly, less definition and detailed in comparison to the UHQR. The bottom end on the original pressing sounds pretty dang good. It really, really does sound good. The UHQR might have just a hint of definition and certainly detail on the drums and Walter Becker's bass. The Walter Becker's bass is probably a little bit more defined on the UHQR here, but still, it's not by leaps and bounds. It's not huge. Bad Sneakers, and I'm only using side one of the songs in the comparison. Bad Sneakers drums on the OG sound very, very good, with, I think, proper weight. They are just shy of the extension and overall definition of the UHQR, but nonetheless, they sound very good. The UHQR bests the original pressing in this area, but not by leaps and bounds. Moving over to number 3, Rose Darling, an excellent track on the album. I talked about this. This has got great drums in it. The UHQR has a little bit edge in the overall bottom end weight, in particular on the drums, at least from my listening and from my playback system. Top end on the OG is surprisingly clean and extended. The UHQR just adds a bit more detail and depth, especially on the bottom end, and it's more defined. And I think really what I'm getting at here, and why these differences aren't massive, but they are very, very identifiable for sure when you're doing critical listening. I really think the quietness of the vinyl on the UHQR really plays a huge part of that. My vinyl is absolutely flawless, but the noise floor on the original pressing is a little higher than it is certainly on the UHQR. And I think that really adds a lot to what we're hearing, and the differences that we are hearing. Even though they're not huge, they are definitely noticeable, and you can certainly hear them in direct comparison. Number 4, Daddy Don't Live in That New York City No More. Excellent presentation on all the instruments on the original pressing. Vocals sound actually really, really good. Bottom end is actually really decent on the original pressing. The UHQR, just as we talked about, has a little bit hint and a little bit better detail. In particular, noticeable on the high end. A lot of it's due to that quiet background, I'm thinking. And the bottom end just seems to have a little bit more definition, maybe a titch more bottom end heft on the UHQR than it does on the original pressing. Last song that we'll talk about in comparing the original 1975 Tara Howe pressing is Dr. Wu. Piano on the original is really, really good. The UHQR has just a slightly better defined upper end on that piano. It just sounds a titch more defined, not necessarily more extended, but better defined. And once again, I think it's that quiet background that's really adding that. The sax on Dr. Wu, as we talked about on the UHQR, by Phil Woods, is absolutely stunning. It sounds great on the original pressing as well. It just slightly lacks the fine detail, in particular on that upper end. The UHQR just has a better, I don't know what you would call it, just better detail on the sax. Not that this is bad in any way, but this just has a little bit better detail. I think, again, it might be to that quiet background. And of course, the 45 RPM speed is certainly helping that, but it does have better detail on the UHQR on the sax than it does on here. But noticeable for sure, but not by huge leaps and bounds is it better for sure on that. Okay, let's go ahead and compare the 1978 Mobile Fidelity original master recording of Katy Lied to the UHQR. Stan Ricker with Mobile Fidelity did the remastering of this album in 1978. And to be honest with you, he did a really nice job. Let me just quickly show you the vinyl on the album. Of course, this was a JVC processed album, a pressed album. That's who Mobile Fidelity used back in the day. And I think this was one of their better quality releases that Mobile Fidelity did. It actually sounds really, really quite nice. It does have a little bit heavier, stronger, I should say, bottom end than the original pressing did. And so prior to my new set of speakers, my old Bowers and Wilkins speakers, I actually kind of preferred the Mobile Fidelity presentation a little bit more than I did the original pressing, just because it had a little bit stronger bottom end. And I'll talk a little bit about that when we get into the ranking of the albums and what I think of that album now with the new Wilson speakers. But anyway, I think that Stan Ricker did a really nice job in remastering the Mobile Fidelity. The bottom end, as we indicated, talking on the first song on the album Black Friday, bottom end is a little stronger, and it's noticeably stronger. It's even stronger than it is on the UHQR. However, it's not bad. It's not over the top bad. It's actually sounds pretty good. And given a proper system, you know how your system is currently, if it maybe a little lean in the bottom end, some people really might like the bottom end presentation of the Mobile Fidelity better than the original, and maybe even on some songs, you know, I can't imagine it, might even be better on than the UHQR in that bottom end, because it is a little stronger, not out of control stronger. When I did the review a couple of videos ago of the Yes Fragile album, and I compared that Lennox 75 album to the Mobile Fidelity one-step version, the one-step version of Yes Fragile had massive bass. Katy Lied does not. It's actually decent. It really is. So I don't want to scare you and say, hey, the bass is way too strong on the Mobile Fidelity. It's not. It is stronger, but it is not over the top stronger. It's actually, given the right system, a really good sounding presentation. Moving on to Bad Sneakers, piano is nice, maybe slightly less extended than it is on the UHQR. Drums on the bottom end sound pretty darn good. On the Mofi, not really quite as balanced when you consider top to bottom as the UHQR, and definitely the Mofi sounds like the top end is slightly clipped, slightly reduced, maybe is a better word, than it is even on the original pressing, and certainly on the UHQR. It just doesn't have quite that definition and extension on the top end as the UHQR. Rose Darling, top end is really quite okay. It's nice. It's slightly subdued compared to the UHQR. Bottom end, once again, on the Mofi, the drums and so forth. Walter Becker's bass, a little bit stronger on the Mobile Fidelity. On Daddy Don't Live in That New York City No More on the Mobile Fidelity. The Mobile Fidelity actually sounded really good on this song because there's quite a good drum presentation by Jeff Beccaro. It actually sounds really good. It just still lacks the overall balance, in particular on the top end, that the UHQR has. And that's really the big difference there. Moving on to Dr. Wu, once again, the top end's just sounds a little bit reduced, and you can certainly hear that to a degree on the saxophone. Phil Woods' saxophone in Dr. Wu. It's got really excellent detail on the UHQR, and surprisingly not bad on the original pressing. But on the Mobile Fidelity, it seems like it's just clipped a little bit on that. It's not terrible. It's not in any way, shape, or form terrible. The bottom end, of course, on the Mobile Fidelity, it just sounds a little bit stronger. Now, with the Mobile Fidelity version of the album, I did roll over to side 2 and take the third track in, Chain Lightning. The reason I did that is because I think the drums in Chain Lightning are absolutely excellent and stunning. And to be honest with you, the presentation on the Mobile Fidelity on Chain Lightning sounds really, really good. Overall, I do think the UHQR is a little bit better than the Mobile Fidelity, but I tell you what, on the Mobile Fidelity presentation of Chain Lightning sounds pretty dang good. It's not bad at all. But really, the Mobile Fidelity just doesn't have quite the extension on the top end, and it lacks that detail and that just little bit extra definition and extension that the UHQR has. It's a pretty good album. If you own it and you're satisfied with it, hey, you know what? It's a good album. I can't say that it's bad in any way, shape, or form. It really is a pretty dang good presentation. Now, let's get into the comparison, and even we'll rank them. The UHQR, and I kind of said this, and we kind of concluded on the sound quality of the UHQR. The UHQR just kind of, it feels like you've just kind of taken a layer of film off of the vinyl or whatever, the master tape, and you're just getting a better look. It just gives you a little bit breath of fresh air. It's more open on the top end. It's a little bit better defined on the bottom end. From top to bottom, the balance on the UHQR is better than either of them, in my opinion. It's not by leaps and bounds. It's not by like, oh my heavens, it's massive. It's not, but it is definitely better on the UHQR. The presentation is a little bit more lifelike, and I keep using that analogy. I just think you've just taken a thin layer off the top, and you can just get a better look and a better listen to the recording of it. In ranking these albums, I would have to go with third place being the Mobile Fidelity, and by a smidgen. And let me tell you why. Because it does have that little bit bottom end boost up. It's not terrible, it's not bad, but it just isn't balanced with the top end, at least in my opinion, and through my system and through my ears. It doesn't sound bad at all. I think this is actually one of Mobile Fidelity's better works and better mastering jobs, to be honest with you. But third place would definitely be the Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs version. Second place, the original 1975 Terrell Hout pressing. Now, if you're fortunate enough, like me, to have one that's clean, and let me know what you think if it's not, because I think my original pressing is actually extremely good. It sounds great. My original pressing sounds way better than my original pressings of the first three. Can't Buy a Thrill, Countdown to Ecstasy, or Pretzel Logic. This album sounds absolutely fantastic. It's very comparable to Asia original pressing, to be honest with you. It really sounds that good. But in first place is the Analogue Productions version of Steely Dan Katy Lied, the UHQR. It just has that overall top to bottom balance. Extension on the bottom and top end it's balanced properly, and that detail, there's just a detail there that is it's noticeable. Here again, not massive, but noticeable. When you do direct comparison, it's pretty obvious that you're getting a better sounding version on the UHQR than you are on the other two. So, third place, Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs. Second place, the original 1975 pressing. First place, and obviously the UHQR is obviously the better pressing of the three here. Okay, so the last thing we have to discuss is the Steely Dan Katy Lied UHQR by Analogue Productions, worth $150+ because they don't give you free shipping. So you're looking at $165 around about that by the time you add tax, if your state charges taxes, whatever. So you're looking at a pretty, I think, a really high dollar amount for this UHQR. Is it worth it over the pressings that I have, or even, the forthcoming SACD? My thoughts are this. If you're a Steely Dan fanatic, if you love Steely Dan, you love their albums, you love Katy Lied, and you're an audiophile, and you have a system, and really, you don't have to have a high dollar system to hear the difference, and I'm not saying that, but if you have a system where you appreciate the sound quality that it produces, and Steely Dan Katy Lied is an album you absolutely love, then yes. And if you're a collector, yes, $150+ is worth it. To me, it was worth it. I love Steely Dan. I love the album Katy Lied. I have an excellent original pressing that sounds absolutely wonderful. But to me, this was worth the $150+ to purchase for me. Now, if you're someone that really, I like Steely Dan, I like Katy Lied, it's okay. Hey, you know what? There's other options out there for you. First of all, the $29 Giffen album that was just released, when this one was released just a few days ago. It's going to sound decent. I won't be buying it, but I will be purchasing the forthcoming SACD by Analogue Productions of Katy Lied, because my experience with the other SACDs of Katy Lied is absolutely worth it. It's 35 bucks. Far cry from $150. If you've got a very nice digital playback system, hey, you know what? I'd hold off and wait and hope for it to come sooner than later, the SACD by Analogue Productions, because I really believe, and we'll have to see when we get it, and we'll revisit this review when we do, I happen to believe from the ones that I've got, they sound really good. Their SACDs are absolutely excellent. But if you happen to have an original pressing like I do that sounds absolutely wonderful and you're happy with it, hey, you're not going to go wrong, because the presentation on my original pressing is excellent. Not to mention the Mobile Fidelity. They're all good. Depending on your system capabilities and your system setup, you know, the Mobile Fidelity might appeal more to some people. I just don't know. For me, the overall presentation of the UHQR was worth it. I'm glad I spent the $150. I'll be spending the $150 when the Royal Scam comes out. I want them. I think Analogue Productions has done a really nice job with the UHQR series of Steely Dan that they are doing. Some better than others. I felt Countdown to Ecstasy and Pretzel Logic were not really as good as I was hoping them to be, yet they were still better than my original pressings and any other pressings that I had. This one's kind of a similar way. I'm excited I got it. It does sound better, not by leaps and bounds better than my original pressing, but it absolutely does sound better. So $150 is a lot to spend. It's going to have to be up to you on whether it's worth it to get it. To me, the extra sound quality, the better sound quality, the little bit better look into that recording that the UHQR provides is worth it to me. And I'm glad I purchased it. Like I say, I'll be purchasing the Royal Scam album when it comes out, hopefully sooner than later for that. I hope we don't have to wait another year. But overall, I think the UHQR Steely Dan Katy Lied is a win. I think Bernie Grunman did a great job in remastering and really did a great job in not overdoing it. He didn't really add things where it shouldn't be added. And he didn't really get things out of balance. It's a very nice, balanced, well-detailed sonic adventure. To me, the $150 was absolutely worth it. Thank you all so much for watching today. I hope you like what you see. If you do, please go ahead and subscribe. We've got a whole bunch of great stuff coming up, as well as we're going to be looking at a few more SACDs. We're going to be talking about some Impex SACDs in a forthcoming video. Not to mention, we've got two fantastic Atlantic 75 albums that are coming out here in the next couple of days. Crosby, Stills and Nash and Genesis. We're going to be taking a look at those as well, along with another Santana Mobile Fidelity release. We'll be taking a look at that. Got a lot of great stuff. If you like what you see, please go ahead and subscribe. But as always, the most important thing to me, and thank you so much for doing this in the past, please leave comments in the comment section below. Let me know what you think of Steely Dan Katy Lied, the UHQR. Are you going to get it? Have you already got it? Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching today. Have a great day.